Cisco earnings. I'll give Daniel just a brief, and you can go deeper if you'd like. But essentially, they beat on earnings, they beat on EPS, and they came in with a reasonable forecast, and they even beat on the infrastructure breakout that they do. And the market kindly rewarded them with a 3% sell-off. Of course, I say that sarcastically, but that seems to be the tale of a few stocks out there. I am very, very happy. The one thing the only thing I'll point out about this was I do feel a little bit better about Cisco and COVID. And I guess what I would say is infrastructure and COVID. The infrastructure companies are getting hammered. First of all, budgets are moving from data center infrastructure to client PCs. I know it sounds weird, but you have to understand that an IT budget is an IT budget inside of an enterprise, and they had to get employees working outside the home. And enterprises weren't going to spend more money, so they ended up spending it on things like Zoom and new PCs. But what that did is there was less money remaining for infrastructure projects, and that not only hit Cisco, that's hit HPE, that's hit Dell. The only one who that really hasn't hurt that much has been Lenovo, but they're busy gaining a market share out there. But I thought that was a really good sign. And the other thing that I thought was really interesting was the hyperscalers. I think Cisco calls them web scalers. It was really good to see them driving business because, quite frankly, while that business hasn't gone to zero, you have a lot of these hyperscalers doing their own, partnering with silicon vendors like Broadcom and doing their own networking gear. So, and 25% apparently of that of the SP number what were these hyperscalers. So they're starting to do some volume there. So some really good stuff.
Yeah, overall, the OEMs have had the biggest headwinds in terms of benefiting from the technology boom that has been COVID-19. COVID reset the world. It changed digital. Anything that was streaming, anything that was cloud, anything that was digital commerce saw explosive growth. So if you were a cloud provider, if you were a SaaS provider, if you were a digital commerce tool, CRM in the cloud, you probably did very well. The big tech names, Dell, Cisco, IBM, HPE, all had greater headwinds because people are buying hardware that would go into a physical data center, but when nobody's in the office, that of course is going to slow down the investments that are made. So Cisco's numbers for a number of quarters have reflected that. The growth of the revenue has been somewhat stagnant. I think it's been 5 quarters of no growth in the top line for Cisco. But I really kind of had a different take on this. I looked at the overall business, and year over year it was flat. But given the headwinds that the company had, given the fact that not only did COVID slow the sales cycle, but you also had massive supply chain issues heading into this whole situation that was a headwind that existed before COVID. I think the company showed quite a bit of strength, resilience would be the word, to be able to come through, keeping revenue flat, showing little inclinations of growth, forward guidance at 3.5%, 5.5% growth coming up in this next quarter, double-digit growth in the WebEx category, and a strong shift from perpetual licensing in their service business to recurring revenue on their software and services. I think over 75% now of the revenue generated for that particular part of the business is now on a recurring scale. So that's another really important part of the business. Cybersecurity is big. We heard Microsoft come out with a number a few weeks back and showing their wares in this space, but Cisco is still one of the biggest in this space, in that physical security layer, and that's not going to go anywhere anytime soon. So as you mentioned, web scale, the large Catalyst 9000 and data center switching, security, WebEx, some smart acquisitions, the AppD side, observability. These are all areas where Cisco shows strength. Of course, the big question mark that I have around Cisco, and I think, Pat, you and I share this sentiment, is the cloud strategy needs better definition. I'm waiting to hear what that definition is. How does Cisco connect to the cloud? IBM has Redshift, or sorry, not Redshift, OpenShift. Woo! With Red Hat, OpenShift. HPE has done pretty well with GreenLake, at least in terms of making that clear. And Dell, of course, has VMware and is pushing there. Cisco needs to really clarify that strategy. I think you and I would both agree we'd like to see and hear more, but you got to give credit where credit is due. It beat on expectations, and that's good stuff, Pat.